Welcome everybody. It's Tuesday the 15th of February and it is now 4:33. I welcome you to the Ordinary Council meeting. I would like Councillor Don Norton to read the acknowledgement, please.
Mayor, we would like to acknowledge this land that we meet on today as the traditional lands of the Nukunuu people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Nukunuu people as the traditional custodians of the Nukunuu region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Nukunuu people today.
Thank you, Councillor Norton. I would now call on Councillor Keller for the prayer and service acknowledgement.
We can all stand, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we pray for the students and staff who return to face-to-face teaching this week. May the school year get back to normal for all to settle in and the education process be fulfilled. With the state government election looming, may all candidates represent their electorates in a fair and honest manner. How nice it is to drive into Melrose on a new safe road that will be of benefit to many people for years to come. May we as councillors also be aware in preparing our next budget, consider what will benefit our people and communities as we progress forward. We thank you for the safety of our homes and where we live for a peaceful life, untouched by wars and aggressive neighbours. May this continue in our lives in future. We pray for this in your name. Amen. Are there any residents who have passed away, Mayor?
Yes, there are three residents who have passed. Hazel Vera McCallum passed away on the 22nd of the 1st, 2022, and she's from Bullery Centre. Consilio Irving passed away on 13th of the 1st, 2022. He's from Port Germain. And Brian Stutley passed away on the 22nd of the 1st, 2022. And Brian was from Melrose.
Okay, we'll stand in silence in memory of those residents who have passed away since our last meeting and those who have made the supreme sacrifice in the service of their country at sea, on the land and in the air. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. Welcome. Is there any apologies? No, we have two attendees, one attendee by Zoom, Barry Richards. Is there any conflict of interest? No, that's good. Any confidential provisions? If not, we'll move on to the previous meeting minutes of the ordinary meeting of council on the 18th of January. Do I have a mover to move the recommendation that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council be taken as read and confirmed? Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. And seconded by Councillor Norton. All those for? Carried. We move on to item 1.6, council resolution action list. The recommendation being that the council receives a notice report. Do I have a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor Nottle. And a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Prestridge. You wish to speak, Councillor Nottle? No. Councillor Prestridge?
No, thank you.
I'll put the motion, all those for. Carried. Item 3, reports of committees, nil. We move on to item 4.1. This is the updated draft vaccination for elected members policy. Do we have a mover for the recommendation as listed? Councillor Keller?
I'd like to move a motion, Mayor, that we receive and note the report, but we do not adopt item 2 for the vaccination of elected members policy, but consider an alternative response from council
So
regarding the COVID-19.
wouldn't it be just easy to receive and note, councillor Keller? Or do you want that alternative response in there?
No, I want the alternative response in there, which is similar to the Port Adelaide Council, which has on their website, if you have a look, a response and recovery to COVID-19 with a set of guidelines which are quite standard to the COVID safe practices that we adopt, something similar.
You might have to elaborate a little bit more because I'm not sure if the council is consistent with this policy.
I can if I'm allowed to speak on it.
All right, do we have a seconder for this motion? So councillor Keller can speak.
I'll second the motion so the council can speak.
Thank you, councillor Prestridge. Yes, do you have anything to say, councillor Keller? Would you like to speak, my learned friend?
Yes, I would please, Mayor. Get my notes.
We can't see councillor.
Councillor Richards, you're still on channel.
I am.
Thank you. Just checking.
Mayor, the new agenda, as what was moved at the last meeting, has been presented again. It is the same policy, however, the word mandatory has been removed with the word binding. Instead, the Oxford Dictionary has the same meaning and everything else remains the same in the policy. Mandatory is obligatory, required or commanded by authority. Binding, from the Oxford Dictionary, is assigning something that one will be held to, e.g. this contract is legally binding agreement. So from that point of view, I don't think anything's changed in the review. The agenda states leadership, and the Premier, his media advisor, is currently, according to the media, alleged to be unvaccinated. While the Premier continues to tell everyone to be vaccinated, including the children, a member of his staff is unvaccinated, who he's probably reluctant to remove, yet there's numerous people in different occupations who have had to stand down from their jobs because they're not mandatory vaccinated. I find it terribly hypocritical for our Premier to stipulate that everyone should be vaccinated and it doesn't occur within his own staff. Now, Liberal MP Russell Broadbent, only yesterday, who has refused vaccination, used Parliament to express his concerns. He's unvaccinated and will treat himself and his wife with ivermectin, which was delisted by the TGA last spring and banned for treating COVID-19. Yet it's effective and successful. He agrees with people requesting choice and freedom. Ivermectin, interestingly enough, is registered in Australia for multiple purposes of agriculture in the livestock industry, for backlining and drenching cattle, sheep, goats. Now, the TGA's incident reports in teenagers is the highest in any age group. They don't have much data on the under 11s because it's still a trial in process. Port Adelaide Mayor, Enfield Mayor Claire Bowen, recently spent 35 days bedridden after being vaccinated and has returned to the chamber to chair their latest meeting. There is no doubt that she won't be advocating mandatory vaccination in her council, but on their website, they refer to a COVID safe practice wear masks when accessing indoor public space, keep a social distance of 1.5 metres, use QR codes when entering facilities, practice good hygiene at all times, do not go out if you are unwell, get tested if you have the mildest of symptoms.
I think that's getting close to time, councillor Keller. Well, while this, the background is very interesting, is this part of the motion, councillor Keller?
Yes, I'd like to see us, instead of having a policy on COVID-19 for elected members, adopt a set of guidelines, suitable guidelines, similar to the Port Adelaide.
They sound quite lengthy, the guidelines, is that correct?
They're quite common practices.
I didn't ask that question. Is it a long list, councillor Keller?
No, I was nearly.
All right, yep.
But yeah, there was a couple other dot points on their list. Now, to be leaders in the field, as our agenda states, and early adopters, you don't have to question the mother of a thalidomide baby, what it was like to be first of using some vaccine. There's numerous European countries who have removed mandatory regulations in only the last couple of weeks. This vaccine is experimental, no guarantee to immunity. You can still spread the disease, vaccine damage.
Councillor, this is, you're not giving us the points that are going in the motion. This is quite emotive speech, and I know
speaking to the motion
you
that
are
we
speaking,
remove.
but we've only got 3 minutes speaking per motion.
Fine.
Councillor Keller. Well, 3, I thought.
So my motion is to remove item 2, the policy,
yes,
completely, and replace it by a set of suitable COVID-19 practices and guidelines, which are
as long as the minute taker knows those points and the councillors know those points, so we can put the motion. That would be good.
okay.
Please.
Just 2 more brief points.
Yes.
There. UNESCO, the Universal Declaration in Bioethics and Human Rights in 2005, Article 6 refers to choice and consent. And recently we debated GM crops. If I could use an analogy, we debated GM crops. There were those in favour, those against in our council area, and we considered to give farmers the option to grow GM crops. Had that been that it was mandatory that farmers could only grow GM crops, there would have been one massive debate over it. So that's the difference between mandatory and freedom of choice.
I think the council. Thank you very much, Kellen. I think the council understand that. Jackie, you had your hand.
Yes, I just wanted to, for the purposes of the minutes, just to clarify if Councillor Keller would be happy with the motion to read to receive and note the report and request the administration to provide draft guidelines for consideration at the March meeting.
Would that be suitable, Councillor Keller?
Yes, to remove the current policy and reconsider it with guidelines, suitable guidelines for the next meeting.
I think therefore, through the chair, perhaps the wording could be to not adopt the vaccination for elected members policy as presented, and point 3 be request the administration to provide draft guidelines for consideration at the March meeting.
Yes, that's along the guidelines. Thanks, Jackie. We do not need, as elected members or a council, a policy on COVID-19 vaccination for elected members, but suitable guidelines.
Thank you, Councillor Keller. Sam, do you wish to speak on this?
Speaking through the chair, just similarly to what's just been stated, my notes was along those lines to develop a set of practices and guidelines for consideration. I would advise against just adopting something without actually reading it and seeing it in a draft.
Yes.
If this motion gets up, and this is more for my benefit of obviously be developing it, is what in there do you want specific that's not already listed as part of the SA health guidelines, which are automatically mandatory? So, for example, COVID check-ins, face masks, etc. are an automatic requirement of SA Health guidelines. And if we implement something, do we want that over and above? And if they relax those guidelines, are we then prepared to relax them at the same time? So is it a working document in parallel with SA Health or something different, just so I may have it drafted?
Yes, it can be, because the guidelines are changing every week, basically.
Yeah.
So that's why I want the mandatory policy. We don't need a mandatory policy because the guidelines are changing all the time.
So sorry, through the chair, is there anything you want over and above from SA Health guidelines? Because we have to adopt them regardless, they are mandatory and binding on everybody.
But do they say that it's mandatory to be vaccinated?
No.
No, they're only encouraging
No,
people
that's
to
correct.
get
But
vaccinated.
the points you've raised, like the face masks, etc., that's all come from SA Health guidelines.
Yeah,
So that's exactly what you want,
so,
to
yeah,
receive a note and to abide by SA Health guidelines.
in those guidelines, we can encourage vaccination, but we can't insist on it or make it mandatory or binding.
Yes. Is everyone quite clear on that, Colin?
Just one thing,
Oh, yes. Yes. Yes, Colin?
just one thing, we all need to be working with the same rules. Now, we've got the staff are working on one set of mandated rules, and you're talking about having elected members working from another set of rules. Now, there is some conflict there that it should be all married up and not just have one rule for one rule for the others.
Sorry, through the chair, they can be different. And we are at consultation with a draft staff policy, which does talk about vaccination. But we haven't concluded that consultation process yet and sat down with the staff and looked at what the next steps are. There's nothing to say that that policy as presented throughout the consultation will be adopted as presented, may be changed or it may not even be adopted, but that'll be a conversation that we'll have as the staff together, and we've got our all staff meeting this Thursday where we discussed.
Yeah,
That address your concerns?
yeah, well, I don't think it's fair that
One rule for one.
you do this, but we're going to do something else.
Thank you.
So,
Yes, councillor Richards.
Yes, Colin has said exactly the same as I was going to say. How does this affect the staff if we change this? So I don't believe that there should be a difference, and I will not be voting for that if it's different to what the staff are going to be doing.
Well, if you want the same one as the staff, you're going to have to wait a week or so. So that's the only way.
Well, so be it.
All right.
I don't believe they should be different.
Thank you for that input. I'll put that motion if there's no more input. All those for? But did you want to speak, councillor Prestridge?
Thanks, Ben. The only thing I wanted to say was I was a bit concerned about the word binding and mandatory also, but there's also another part there, which is in the guideline, 4.1.1.3. We're prepared to adopt the practice of wearing masks at all times, except when we speak. That's fine, but under the guidelines, that's going to be taken away soon.
Yes.
The mandatory vaccinations is already going to be taken away for employees. If you keep up with the news, they're going to be taking that away soon because too many people have lost their jobs because they haven't been vaccinated. I'm personally fully vaccinated and everything, but I think we've just got to be very careful on how we do this and what we make mandatory or binding, particularly with staff and other employees.
Well, that's
Particularly the visiting employees also.
and the relaxation is while we're abiding by.
That's what I think.
Health
So you
guidelines.
go by guidelines,
Yes.
then you can keep relaxing as it suits. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, councillor Nigel.
so can you just remind us of the motion again before we vote, please?
The motion being that the council receives and notes the report and abides by the SA Health guidelines. Is that clear?
And we go looking at it again in March meeting or?
Well, the SA Health guidelines will be a moving fluid.
Right, so councillor Keller's happy with the guidelines?
Can you consult Jackie?
Jackie, is that the motion?
No, that's not what I understood councillor Keller was moving.
What were you moving, councillor?
Through the chair, I think councillor Keller was happy to receive a note not adopt the policies presented,
Right.
and council develop a set of practices and guidelines in relation to COVID-19.
That's correct.
And if that's, I've got that correct,
Yeah.
bearing in mind that whatever you adopt in that, it's assumed it's wearing face masks, whatever it may be, and SA Health relax, you will actually have something stronger than what SA Health does.
Because absolutely, because if we adopt a set of health guidelines of our own, it won't be a current moving fluid option. Yes, councillor.
Just thinking that, I thought we just spoke about that, as they relax the SA Health guidelines, we relax our guidelines. We're not just talking about that.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's what we said
Too.
So through the chair, you would need to have that re-endorsed by council.
each time.
As a moving document, yes.
Why can't it be included in the document? Through the chair, sorry. Why can't
Well,
it be included in the document? As per the guidelines that are relaxed by SA Health, our guidelines also relax.
Well, that's the draft.
Yes, councillor Shardy.
I think the wording is that it needs to reflect current guidelines
Yes, that's what I was
on
talking
the
about.
day,
Yes.
Yeah,
and it's covered.
that covers,
Yeah, to reflect current guidelines.
So can I get you to read that? I'm sorry, Sam, could you read that motion, please, for clarity?
So the recommendation 1 is printed, recommendation 2 will be does not adopt the vaccination policy for elected members, and recommendation 3 would be council develop a set of practices and guidelines in relation to COVID-19 for further consideration by council.
Is that correct, councillor Keller?
I think we missed it again.
No, it still doesn't include that if the
Doesn't include the movement.
Gold Coast
correlation.
move.
Yeah.
So
Consistent with guidelines as presented.
SA
SA Health.
guidelines.
So through the chair, when they're developed and brought back to you, that will actually be contained within the document itself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you'll actually need to consider the draft and those words at that time, rather than just give a blanket approval. I feel much more comfortable with something.
Everyone okay with that?
Through the chair, councillor Keller, I had a look on Port Adelaide Enfield's website. I can't see the document that you're referring to. I just wanted to see how they couch their wording with what we're trying to achieve here. But I couldn't find it on the website.
If you go to their COVID-19,
Yeah,
it refers to response and recovery for COVID-19. I think it's about an item 4 on their website.
and does it reflect back to the SA Health guidelines? Perhaps if you give Sam a copy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So through the chair, Jackie, I've got a copy of it. It's on their website under COVID-19 response and recovery. So it's more of a statement on their website than an actual document.
It's not an actual guideline or a policy, is it? It's a statement.
It's a statement and it refers to SA COVID hotline. So it talks about collection of RAT tests, who should undertake them. Please make sure you wear a mask when entering our facilities, check in with QR codes or a manual sign-in sheet where applicable, keep the density limit to 1 person per 2 square kilometres. Then it's got a general contact number for Port Adelaide Enfield around dogs and COVID and waste. Again, so it repeats itself a little bit in terms of social distancing and so forth, but in essence, it does repeat SA Health guidelines.
And if you scroll down, it has the dot points that I read out there.
That's correct. So please continue with COVID safe practices to keep everyone safe. It is essential we still maintain our COVID safe practices, which include wearing masks when accessing indoor, keeping 1.5 distances, using QR codes, practice good hygiene, do not go out if you're unwell, get tested if you have the mildest of symptoms, get vaccinated, and discuss with your medical concerns, follow health advice during isolation, and continue to care and support our community.
Has everyone got clarity on this issue now? Councillor Keller? That's good. All right, I'll put that motion. All those for? Against? Thank you, carry. Item 4.2, which is the matter of Melrose Park Bench Memorial. The councillors are familiar with the recommendation. Would someone like to move that motion? Thank you, councillor Norton. And a seconder. Thank you, councillor Prestridge. Would you like to speak, councillor Norton?
Thank you, Matt. Yes, I'd just like to move the motion due to the fact I think it's a great idea. I don't know a lot about the deceased family, but if there's anybody else in the room has any close knowledge of this family, it would be nice to hear about, but no.
Thank you, councillor Norton. Councillor Prestidge, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, just a kind of, thank you, Matt. Just on the third point of that, I wanted to change the motion a little bit on the option one to include developing a policy relating to placement of memorials within townships, because if we don't,
It's going to come up
every time, and Jackie Blackie will be putting up a sign for his dead dog and 3 cats or some damn thing. I think developing a policy would be a good way to do it.
Are you comfortable with that, councillor Norton?
I am.
It's just to change that motion.
Thank you, councillor Prestidge. I'll just speak briefly, and as I came back from down at stall 54 today, I did note with interest half a dozen park benches are exactly the same as with Badgers and McCullums and other historical families from around the area. So I think it is a good thing. If there's no more input, I'll put that motion. All those for.
Did Jackie get the second point of that motion?
It's actually Catherine taking the minutes, but yes, I've recorded. I'm doing backup, councillor Prestridge, that's fine.
Oh, sorry, Catherine. Did she?
Hang on, I'm just going to get Sam to read that motion if that's.
Thank you. Sorry.
To see Barry. Oh, that's fine.
So through the chair, option 2 on page 3 of the report does have an option for that, which is develop a policy relating to placement of memorials within townships.
But it says denies the request.
Correct, but if you're
I
happy,
just want to add that third one to option 1.
and you're happy with that wording,
Absolutely. Thank you.
And you clear on that, Catherine?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you very much. I'll put that motion. All those for. Carry it. Item 4.3, delegations annual review. There's some light, exciting reading here for all the members, and it's with great joy that it passes. So I seek a mover of the recommendation points 2.1 to 2.4. Thank you, councillor McCarthy. Probably the strongest reader of the council. And a seconder, I seek a seconder for that. Councillor Noddle, thank you very much. Do you wish to speak, councillor McCarthy?
Only that I did have a range of questions after having read through many of the delegations there. And then speaking with the CEO, all of those have been answered. So, no, I'm quite fine, thank you.
Excellent, and I do commend you on that. I spoke to Sam on that, and he has advised me of that communication. Councillor Noddle, I'm sure that you'd have a couple of questions on this.
Well, no, I don't. It was a massive read, and I'm glad it's all over. But I just like to support Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, councillor Noddle. Excuse me, a little outburst there. I'll put the motion. All those for. Again, yeah, thanks, Barry. Carried. Item 4.4, the monthly finance report. The recommendation being that the council receives and notes the report. Do I have a mover for that motion? Thank you, councillor McCarthy.
My apologies, I had to catch up.
That's okay, that's a big document. And a seconder? Thank you, councillor Norton. Do you wish to speak, councillor McCarthy?
No, I don't know.
Councillor Norton?
Thank you, man. The only thing I'd like to point out is that the pie charts are very hard to read with those colours. Seconding between the colour differences of the pie chart.
On the scale size.
Yeah, it's just so small and anyway, that's just something that maybe can be considered in the future. Thank you.
7 colours in a rainbow and they all stand out, don't they?
Order, councillor Keller. I'll put that motion. All those for? Carried. Item 4.5, proposed changes to senior management. Do I have a mover for that recommendation? Oh, thank you, Barry. Thank you, councillor Richards, do I have a seconder? Thank you, councillor McCarthy. Do you wish to speak, councillor Richards?
Just one question. All of the managers in agreement with that? Sorry, through the chair, that's question the same.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor McCarthy, do you wish to speak?
Indeed, thank you. A curiosity question, which really doesn't change the decision process, but I'm interested in the bandwidth difference by taking one position back and increasing the responsibility of the other position. Is the bandwidth wide enough to justify the restructure? i.e., are we having 100,000 and we're taking out a position back down to 97, for example?
Sam?
Yeah, so through the chair, the corporate services role will go, obviously it's for the structure under a proposed director of corporate, so the corporate accountant will go back. That role I'm proposing would be advertised at 85,000 and it's currently at about 101,000. So it will go down. They will remove the WHS and risk responsibilities, which will come across jointly between myself and director of corporate, as opposed to sitting in that individual. So it'll be more a finance-based particular role.
Does that clarify?
Clarifies that question? God, I was going to know.
Yes.
So, and I'm partially had, so this is for the CEO through the chair, of course. I partially had this conversation with the CEO, but I noticed in that structure, and one of the really important roles in there, obviously, from time to time, not obviously, from time to time can get a little overlooked in the complexities and the amount of work that's in there in managing our information management systems. And this person is going to be coming in to take on this role, is going to have the operational responsibility for this, even though the overall responsibility sits at a higher level. I'm just interested to make sure that, one, we've got the information management system supports networks and structures for council to support that position.
Yeah, so through the chair, good question. And we're very lucky that we use Pitstop IT services. Council's just endorsed a 3-year contract with that. We're probably about 6 months into that now, their service agreement, and that does cover on that backup support as well. So it's not just purely about managing emails and servers. It also comes to those hotspot questions. If someone's got a particular issue with Microsoft Word or being able to log on or getting a remote access issue, it's a 24/7 service that we have. This role will still manage that overall contract, and that contract or responsibilities becomes the communication with council and that contractor specifically. So we've got one particular person here.
Sure, if I may just continue that question. So I guess maybe I should have worded that a little differently. So I'm particularly interested in the structure and the processes and the mechanisation, if you like, for IT, that actually manages all the information management systems, not just access to the processes and resources within the computer system.
Yeah, so through the chair, the actual everyday management is picked up already by particularly Jackie's area in terms of administration and records department, which is covered by Catherine. So all that internal record keeping stuff is done already in-house by certain roles. But in terms of managing servers and the back end, bigger framework, for a better word, is Pitstop. They currently manage that.
Yep. Thank you.
Any more input, councillor Prestridge?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just through the chair again. At what cost is this going to be? And do we, why the change from manager to director? Was there a GEMS assessment done? Was it just a matter of changing roles and responsibilities for those two positions? Or is it just so you've only got a smaller management team? There's a whole heap of questions I just haven't got through my head yet.
Yeah,
Sorry.
No, good questions. Primarily, if you look at some of the comparisons we've done, and I think I've referenced them in this report and have done previously before, council of this size, it's quite uncommon to have probably more than 2 senior managers outside of the CEO. If you look at, for example, Streaky Bay, Barunga West, for example, that have similar size budget, similar organisations to what we do. Like council is the same, we get that. Obviously, when I first started, we had 4 senior managers, but that was a structure that was endorsed at the time. It was quite top heavy, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, but it was quite top heavy. But they were all locked into 3-year contracts, so you don't really want to be going out and paying out contracts to make those changes. So as the opportunities do present, it's a moving target, and it's a good opportunity to take advantage of that situation and then refine that structure to where you need to be. Will it cost any more? No, it won't. Any proposed increases to one of the directors or proposed directors, which is Jackie's role, to make them comparable in terms of where they sit, will be absorbed by the savings we would achieve in the manager of corporate services. In terms of overall wages budgetary savings, given some of the changes we've had, and particularly with now 2 senior managers stepping out of the senior management team within this financial year, it'll still be overall savings in that particular area. In terms of the job titles themselves, it's consistent with the market, and I did get that advice from McArthur's as well. Their advice was people at that level are typically called, when you call whatever you like, you can call them general manager or director. Our fear was if they were called manager and they had a manager reporting to a manager, it just didn't quite look that clean.
I understand that, thank you. Just one more question on that, if I can. The concern now will be, will you have enough strength in your current team to be able to support those positions if they're on leave?
Yeah, yes, so it's a great question. One of my greatest fears has actually been that we are too top heavy in terms of the doers as well. For example, Jackie and Brenton undertake a lot of the doing operational stuff, that's okay. But therefore that means sometimes the strategic and overall management of the business or their business area sometimes gets pushed to the side. This proposed structure allows them to get more focused on the strategic areas and actually have a backup person. So for example, we've seen the operations manager in Brenton's area, a significant improvement, positive improvement. And again, we would see this in Jackie's area as well with the manager of corporate.
Thanks, thank you.
That answers all your questions.
That answers my questions, thank you.
Colin?
I didn't change my opinion, but I just needed to know.
If there's no more input, I'll put that motion, all those for. Carry. Item 4.6, the Northern Passenger Transport Network. This came as quite interesting reading.
Mhm.
It is a continuing story. Would someone like to move the recommendations as listed? So we can have some input, please. Thank you, Councillor McCarthy.
I'll
Yes.
second that we receive and note the report.
And the rest, Councillor Keller?
The motion.
The motion was for the recommendation as listed, 1 to 5. Yes, Councillor McCarthy moved that.
Yeah.
1 through 5.
1 to 5, Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you.
Just, sorry.
And that's okay, Danny?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Keller. Would you like to speak, Councillor McCarthy? For how long?
No, it won't be for long. It was very enlightening and a bit insightful. I think the breadth of the recommendations there enables the CEO to go out there and do what needs to be done and to review this whole thing. I think the parameters are there. My only bit further question to that would be that after those conversations I had, we get out subsequent report, etc. If we are going to be sitting in a position where we're continuing to manage the baby, so to speak, I'd be interested to know what the consultants or the management firms' costs are likely to be to provide those ongoing expertise and staying consistent with all of those rules and regulations and compliance issues around all of this.
Look, thank you for that question, and I agree with you too, and I've already asked Sam up to this point what that report has cost. Could you help with that answer, Sam?
Yes, thank you through the chair. Good question. And the report itself is indicative of about $7,000 to do what we've done. I've almost got, when I say UHY, I've almost got the financial component completed. Dealing with that this morning around vehicles and so forth, balancing out. And in relation to your comments about moving forward, if the request of council was to have someone like UHY undertake that regular process, it could certainly be there. Fundamentally, however, I would probably argue it's actually what you're paying the person to run the program to do. And one of those recommendations is actually updating that job description. It is quite outdated and can be incorporated within that. With that, however, you would more than likely want to be paying that role accordingly to make sure that those responsibilities are captured.
Sure, and I guess, and agree, I guess I was carrying on the basis that if we continue to hold the baby and run with what we've got, there are some limitations to that and would need to be bolstered. But continuing with that structure that we've currently got is not acceptable.
No, absolutely not.
So the second part of that, if I may, I've got the opportunity, sorry. And I touched on this with the CEO last evening, is that given that that's actually a fairly important piece of supply by council to people in our area and other areas, and the risk of people misconstruing the intent
Yes,
and all the things that
already,
we've got
yes.
there, is that we actually, and I actually did have this written down somewhere, that we actually do make a note somewhere that appears perhaps in the recommendation, so I'll need to think about it sort of bit, that this does not mean that there is any immediate cessation of services or any of those sort of things.
Yes.
This is actually to actually finesse the system.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor McCarthy, for some very valid points. Councillor Keller, do you wish to speak?
Yes, Mayor. I have probably a number of questions I'd like to address to this.
To the CEO, yes.
To the CEO. And if we go back to the reports of committees, there was reference in there that the last meeting was held in 2018, which I found was incorrect. And then we know that there's been meetings regularly, which you have chaired, and that one councillor, Arthur, chaired that you weren't available.
Yes.
So we know there were regular meetings. And then notice was sent out when our governance panel recommended that it not be a Section 41 committee. Notices were sent out to other councils, and it caused them a massive amount of confusion, angst and confusion, as I'm aware, because they thought the committee had been resolved. In actual fact, it wasn't, and the committee, I believe, still exists in a similar form. Is that right, CEO?
So through the chair, there is no formal committee that exists, no.
So the Section 41 committee didn't continue on as another identity.
So through the chair, no, there is no formal committee. There has been a reference group of which the current coordinator of the Northern Passenger Transport Network, I believe, has met with that group once.
Okay, so it's imperative that all the councils meet again and resolve this issue.
Yes.
And then there was also a statement that Mount Remarkable, while they have the office here, is sort of out of pocket considerably for a lot of the tasks they do. Can that be addressed in any way?
Well, as I understand it, we're resolving that as we speak. Is that correct, Sam?
Yeah, so through the chair, one of the greatest contention points, and for members' clarity, this is discussed, this being all the passion to discuss monthly at the CEOs meeting that happens amongst the 6 CEOs. And they're very well aware, they being the CEOs are aware that this report was coming and have been advised and kept in the loop, and they've also now got a copy of this report and our agenda as well. So they've been well informed, the CEOs have been, how they communicate that with their councils and so forth, this is up to them. But in terms of the cost, you are correct. It was only last year when I asked the question of a former manager of corporate services what host cost we were receiving for Northern Passenger Transport Network, to which we weren't and never have received a host cost for holding it. It is very common, and in fact UHY have actually provided us with industry benchmarking undertaken by the LGA on what is a benchmark figure. It's about 21% of the overall income of the service, which is attributable as an average to the host provider. So for the last 12 months, we have been charging NPTN a host cost. That's broken down into two components. One is a fixed property cost, which is in essence a rent, which is about $400 a month. And the other one is an actual office host support. So for example, we provide all the IT services, we provide insurance costs, we provide the staffing arrangements, we provide finance costs and HR, et cetera. So we have been journaling that across, but in the consolidated completed financial summary you get, you will see the year that we've actually been charging it, as well as what it should have been for a number of years if we were to charge that cost using the average benchmark of 21%. That's not to say the other councils will accept that, but nonetheless, it's prepared independently, and that's what I specifically wanted, was an independent expert in this field to be able to prepare it, so that when I meet with these councils, that it's not.
So you have a retrospective costing to show the other councils.
That's correct. There is quite, some of the councils are hung up over the original reserve account, of which we've been able to locate that information from 2007, and the assets were transferred from central local government region. And I don't want to quote it up publicly, but what's been advised in the reserve account to what's likely to be what we consider the true number if we incorporate host costs historically, certainly significantly less than what we probably.
Well, thank you, CEO, for that. Is everyone, yes, Councillor McCarthy?
Just one more point, probably not a question. Well, I suppose is to get this through the chair to the CEO, just for picking up on what Councillor Keller said about the section 41. We were discussing this last night, future management structures. And so you might just explain how that might work with the 43.
Yeah, certainly. Through the chair, part of the discussion I've had with UHY is how this thing will be managed moving forward, and you can maintain status quo. And this is what will all come back to council after discussion with the other councils. It could be that you go back to a section 41 committee. It could be that you maintain the status quo. You may look at another host council. You may, well, I say you, as a collective, you may look at an NGO, for example, that may want to pick it up. All of which are doable in respect to the funding bodies. Both the state and the Commonwealth government have had discussions with me, more so the Commonwealth government, who have expressed concerns in the recent weeks, things that you've read in that report. But there is an option for a section 43, noting that NPTN actually started through a section 43, through central local government region. It was a different service back then, but that is how it started. And that would create its own entity, its own identity, and some equal ownership back to the member councils, in which this case would be 6 or 7 councils, depending if Goyder was to participate in that or not. But council would then still have some line of responsibility to it. Certainly UHY will be recommending whatever structure, whether it's 41, 43, etc., that there is a board that has some degree of independence. For example, we've got a skills-based board, an accountant on the board, someone who understands community capacity network, etc., which we would hope then these governance issues that have been identified would have been picked up a lot earlier.
Everyone's at ease. Yes, Councillor Nuttall.
Well, just Sam, are you confident if it goes to a host council that our finances that we've put in over the years will get back, or what's your thoughts that how well compensated will we be if it goes to a host council?
Through the chair, I don't think I can really answer that. As it stands at the moment, for simplicity reasons, the District Council of Mount Remarkable is the service provider of North Capacity Transport Network. So whilst we provide the service to other councils, and our funding deeds say that we do need to provide it across those other 6 councils in the region. Now, fundamentally, those assets, intellectual property, risk, everything sits with sort of cash. Whilst it sits with us, it's technically Mount Remarkable's. However, I think you would want to go to the table in good faith with those member councils who have supported the program, supported the volunteers, and supported Mount Remarkable over that period of time as well. So I would be strongly stressing that when you go to the table to discuss the issue, when I'm at the table, my view has always been this is not about someone trying to take from someone else. It's about what is best for the passenger moving forward, who can best provide it, what corrects the governance issues, and what gives it the sustainability. And that, I think, will ultimately flush out who the best host of the service will be. I don't think anyone's trying to rip anyone.
No one's trying to discontinue the service or rip each other off. They just want continuity and continuation of the service. And And with those wise words, I'll put that motion, all those for.
Sorry, through the chair,
Yes.
sorry to cut you off. Just picking up on Councillor McCarthy's point.
When I had speed too.
Did you want to add at number 2, so adding 6.1, that council maintains its commitment to the Northern Transport Network service and its ongoing contribution to the community?
Thank you.
Yes. And you move that, is that okay?
Is that point 6?
And councillor Keller, that's okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'll put that motion again, all those for. Carry. Thank you. Which is a little emotive, that one. Item 5. Motions and questions. Item 5.1, motions on which notice has been given, nil. Item 5.2, motions without notice. Is there any motions without notice from members? Nil. Item 5.3, questions with notice, nil. Item 5.4, questions without notice. Councillor, oh, well, I can't see it. Oh, no, there's Councillor Prestridge.
Thank you, Mayor. Through the chair, I just want to ask, particularly the CEO and maybe Brett might be able to help me. We've been talking for months and months and months now about Wilmington, the lighting in Wilmington, the watering systems in Wilmington, a number of other things in Wilmington, but to date, still nothing has happened. I keep getting told that, oh yes, they're looking at doing this, or yes, they're looking at doing that, oh yes, they're talking to progress, or yes, they're talking to so and so, but I've not seen anything happening. Can we please get some action? Please get some action on this lighting system and these watering systems in Wilmington before I get strung up on one of them tall trees in the middle of the main street.
Thank you, Councillor Prestridge. And some of these might be better one-on-one outside the meeting, but I'll put it to
I
you.
meant to ask Sam, and I do apologise, but
I'll ask,
that's gone far.
that's okay. Look, I'll ask the CEO or Brenton, who's best equipped to answer that question.
Thank you through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Prestridge. I can't give you an exact answer right now as to when and how it will be done. Certainly, I did attend the last Wilmington Progress meeting where it was discussed. I did provide, I think yourself and elected members of Wilmington Progress a written response in relation to that. I understand that our operations manager has been working with the lights. I mean, the lights themselves, I'm not an electrician, so I'll give you a very quick dumb version. Are fundamentally okay, but it's the power pack that is the problem. The power pack that was originally supplied with them, they're not the right use. They're for domestic use, not commercial use. I understand the ops manager has been trialling at the depot. I've seen it. He's been trialling lithium-ion batteries and so forth to try and see if he can retrofit the power packs to make it work. That being the case, and we're trialling with one before we roll it out across all of them and waste money. If we can get it to work on one, we'll roll it out with the others. I do believe that the ops manager has spoken with Mr. Quick of Wilmington Progress, and he's been made aware of that also. And I believe the same has happened with the watering system in terms of the irrigation, etc. on a couple of spots, and the parks and maintenance crew due in Wilmington. I believe it's in about a fortnight's time. They've just finished at Murraytown, and those are the issues that are going to be addressed while they're there.
Thank you, CEO. Could you just give it?
Thank you, Sam. But I'm sorry, Matt.
I was just asking the indicative costing on the changeover.
On the line, I couldn't tell. If it's lithium batteries and that does work, I imagine it would be quite minimal. We could do it. If that's not the case, then we'll need to move to.
No, that's okay. No, it was a hard question. Yeah, I'm sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, and that's fine. Thank you for that, Sam. The issue is there's plenty of solar experts out there that can tell you on the phone tomorrow what you need. Plenty of them. We don't have the skills here to do it. So nothing's happening. We're talking.
Just through the chair, I have consulted with an expert in solar lighting or similar. His verdict, and also the verdict of the electrician that we had originally dealt with, was that it's not a suitable construction for that type of use. Even though we may be able to retrofit something and make it work, it is still not fit for purpose and may not last the distance. So We have consulted with an expert. The expert has told us it would require a complete replacement of the system to get the whole thing to work as I'm sure the community would like. So, and so in essence, that would mean that it would be a new project, a new budget moving forward. But if we can repair, we may be able to do it. But the biggest issue we've had is water and water getting into the system. And just because it's not quite suitable for what the intention was.
Councillor Prestridge.
Yeah, thank you, Brendan. Brendan, it's not suitable because the panels are in the wrong place to start with. That's the very first thing you need to look at. The battery system they use is not a suitable system. The lights leak. And we can stand here and keep talking about this for the next 6 months. Council put it in. It didn't work from the time it was put in. And this is well over 12 months ago. I can go out tomorrow and get someone to come and tell us what to do. It's all right to consult with people. Let's get something done, please. I'm really getting frustrated over it.
Through the chair, we've actually done that whole process. So it is a complete replacement of the system, including the location of the panels themselves. So we have that information. I believe I've got some indicative costs that can be used for budgetary purposes. But we don't currently have a budget to undertake the replacement. I'm not even sure we have a budget for maintenance of the system, but that's obviously something we'll have to work through. But I do believe the question you asked, I do have that info, and that can be presented at budget time.
Thank you, Brandon, but by the way, you're holding back on the price. It sounds quite expensive. Anyway, it sounds like we're moving forward on that, so that's good. Is there any more questions? Does that finish your questions, Councillor Preston?
No, it doesn't. Thank you, Mayor, but I'm just going to sit back now and leave it.
Well, there will be some information coming back to council, hopefully, which will resolve this issue. This is my understanding.
Well, that's also my understanding, but 1 minute I'm told we've consulted and he's looking at something. Next minute I'm told, yeah, we know what's wrong with it. So what's the answer?
Well, that is
what is the answer, please?
It's coming back to council, so we'll look at it then. Next question from the wonderful Councillor Keller.
I have two, if I may, Mayor.
Oh, at your discretion, Councillor Keller, as long as they're not too long.
Thank you, Mayor. Last week I attended the Uluru Centre Tourism and Business Association, is that correct?
Uluru Centre Development and Tourist
Development
Association.
and Tourism Association. They are asking me to ask council, where is the Uluru CWA building report that they've been asking for since last year? Council was going to get electricians in, plumbers in to look at it, and they've heard nothing. And I've heard two different conflicting reports myself. So I'd like to actually know where the report is of this CWA building at Uluru Centre.
Thank you for your first question. And I must remind you, some of these questions may be better just one-on-one. But Sam or Brenton, would you like to answer that question?
Thank you through the chair. I don't know if there's a report specifically. Certainly, we only just recently followed up again after our conversation when you raised this with me the other day, Councillor Keller, with our buildings person to find out the electrical costs in particular, because that was the major problem. And I'm meeting tomorrow at 4 p.m. with the chair of BCTDA to talk about this and a couple of other matters as well.
So do you have any costs at this stage or approximate?
I couldn't tell you straight off the cuff, no, sorry, I'd have to take that on notes.
But you will be receiving some costings from the electrician tomorrow. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say tomorrow.
Well, you know, you're meeting with him tomorrow, so the costings will be coming soon.
Through the chair, I wouldn't want to provide a figure off the cuff without it being more accurate, sorry.
And part two of your question, Councillor Keller?
Our second question.
I'm sorry. Beg your pardon.
Last year I spoke to several members of staff about investigating road renovation like bony roads. And
Operational stuff, councillor Keller?
yes.
Thank you.
And I sided with them that the use of a reefinator, which some of you may be aware of, is a ripper and a 28-ton grid roller that farmers use. There's several of them in our area, contractors available. And the Streaky Bay Council last year did 5 kilometres of road with one of these reefinators, did it in about a day and a half, ripped it up, reconstructed it and laid it. The locals said it's the best they've ever seen the road. Now, we're always having issues with the Morchard Road out of Bullery Centre. It becomes bony. It's fine when it's graded, it becomes bony soon after when the fines leak. I would like to see a trial set up this autumn because the reefinator works better or doesn't work well when it's wet because it's ripping and crushing. We've got an FAE machine that's capable of renovating bony roads. The reefinator will do the same thing, but probably 20 times faster. If we could select a bony section of road out of Bullery Centre somewhere local and get this contractor in and the council machine do 500 metres or a kilometre, one does one half side the road, the other does the other half. Cost can be compared, results can be compared, and the water truck can water it down, roll it and reconstitute it. Because Streaky Bay Council has actually engaged Joel Lynch to do twice as much in this financial budget. I've been asking the questions for somebody to contact. I gave members of this council contacts at Streaky Bay to speak to, and I have heard nothing since.
Have you spoken to the members you referred to?
Yes, yes. And it seems as though the person that may have been engaged to contact them has left. But I'd like to see what the equipment is there. I'd like to see a trial set up while we're talking about in the next budget using crushed materials. I'd like a trial set up to compare costs and actual actions and times.
It sounds more like a motion, councillor Keller, than a question.
Well, it's starting off as a question.
Yes. Thoughts? Sam or Brendan or council?
Yes, sorry, through the chair, what was the question?
Can we trial the reefinator?
With the FAE and a reefinator on a bony section of road.
I've got a very bony section at the bottom of my driveway, councillor Keller, but we won't do that one.
Through the chair, we can certainly look at it. I am by far any road expert, as I've said to you on a number of occasions. My only immediate concern, which can easily be allayed, would be, I believe in the past you've told me it's $500 an hour to hire one of these. I just need to make sure we have the appropriate budgetary support if you want to trial it in autumn, which is just really cool.
You'd be amazed what they do in an hour.
I should hope so. I should hope so.
And also, I've heard no report back of the success or the operations at Streaky Bay with the reefinator. I do know the reefinator was actually used down at Mundunny, Spalding, Northern Areas Council, on some rough rises with success. In fact, they said the operator was probably overzealous and went over it too many times because that's what he does naturally. And it broke down very fine. So there's examples around Streaky Bay to northern areas, and I think we need to investigate it.
Well, I'm sure we can investigate it if that's what the council decides. Councillor Noddle, I can see you're
Oh, well, firstly, I don't know whether you want to back up councillor Keller with his proposal, or know whether you want to make it a formal thing.
Do you want to make it, or that's a question to the council as a whole? Is it Daniel, or to the actual CEO and the infrastructure director?
I think we need to consult
and get the answers back.
Brenton and
Yes.
the CEO to
Before we can go any further.
to get them to look into the reefinator and consider it and bring it back to us.
I think that's a good idea.
So through the chair, which we can do, you just mentioned Northern Areas Council, they use a refinator as well.
No, it was a landowner that they engaged
Oh, right.
him to do a rough section of road.
Was that recently?
No, last year,
What, Mundunny?
yes, the road out to Mundunny. Young Sparks did it.
Is that, you're satisfied with that response, councillor Keller? Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. Councillor Prestwich, do you have one or not? Oh, councillor Noddle.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, got sidetracked. Yeah, just going back to councillor Keller's question about CWA, this report's been awaited for months and months and months. Now, what's the process? You say there's no written report, but shouldn't there be, if you've engaged a building inspector or whatever it is you're looking at for, whatever situation, shouldn't there be a written report? Always have a written report and not just, oh, he's going to come up with a few figures tomorrow. There should be a written report for most of these things, I would have thought. What's the process?
And so through the chair, as I said to Councillor Keller, whether there is a written report or not, I actually don't know. I haven't read it. That's answer the question. And the building inspector can provide us whatever we ask them to do in terms of report, written report, non-written report, detailed, non-detailed, etc. But the prices that our building inspector will give us will be indicative. And at this point in time, firming up to next year's budget, better pricing. Hence why I've also asked for an electrician to actually take a look and give us a price on that. So when I come to budget time, I can actually give you some definitive pricing, not indicative, if that's what council chooses to do in next year's budget.
Councillor Keller?
I can recall going back, and it's more than a year, I think, that they requested to get an electrician in to give a quote. It almost goes back to Haley Trott's time, not Ebony's. But it's been talked about for so long and there's still no electrician's quote. Thank you, councillor Noddle.
Thank you, councillor Keller. Thank you, councillor Noddle. Councillor McCarthy.
Do I have a question?
Oh, why don't you tell me?
Okay, get yourself a drink of water, I'll be here for a while. No, the simple question which to the CEO, if I may, through the chair, and Brenton may know as well. Recent months, I had a meeting at the parking bay, Mount Remarkable turn-off with officers from DIT to a range of issues associated with that particular park. And I was wondering whether council has actually been appraised of any further actions from DIT at this point or not. I suspect not, but I'm asking a question.
No, sorry, through the chair, good question, and no, we haven't. I only thought of that last week when I was driving past Porchbone and looking at the parking bay. So no, and clearly that not advised you either. So thank you.
Cool, thank you.
Good.
Thank you very much. My learned members, item 6.1, Mayor's report. Looks bloody particularly bright. As Australia Day was cancelled, the celebrations and the ceremonies were cancelled. That hasn't helped at all, but I did note with great interest that Councillor Keller celebrated Australia Day at Murray Bridge Speedway. So I was wondering if I could put my 3 beers at the Rabra Hotel on that list, Councillor Keller. Maybe not. Anyway. If there's any, we'll continue on with that in a minute. Any questions, you feel free to ask. If not, I ask for someone to move that the council receives and notes the report. Councillor Norton and seconded by Councillor McCarthy. Do you wish to speak? And if not, I'll put the motion. All those for. Carried. Item 6.2. Elected members' activities reports and communications costs and reimbursements. Do members wish to speak on their reports? Or is there any questions? Apart from how was the Speedway, Councillor Keller?
Mayor, if I could just comment, I
Yes.
was networking with the Mid Murray Council and Murray Bridge Council, but it's become aware to me how actively involved Councillor Norton is in the community, and I was just trying to become more involved.
Well done, Councillor Keller. Valiant effort.
No chance unless you've got a push for it.
Is there any other elected member got no questions on council's activities? If not, I'll ask for a mover of the recommendation. Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. And seconded by Councillor Keller. Thank you. If there's no questions, all those for? Carried. Item 7, correspondence. Item 7.1, that $20,000 CEO, isn't that just been renamed or from Minister Spears regarding the Portman jetty?
Well, I'm looking at yes through the chair. The grant is an internal government grant, so it's in other words, Department of Environment giving a grant to Department of Infrastructure to allow a study report.
Smoking mirrors, is that what you're saying?
$20,000 worth, you won't get much.
Well, thank you for that. Is there any questions on the rest of the correspondence? So I was pleased item 7.7 to David Spears and Councillor Norton perhaps being successful in getting those fire tanks from Minister Spears when he visited last time. So we've put that in the correspondence. It's been televised, Councillor Fletcher. If not,
Just, Mike,
yes.
just a question. Did anyone actually read a lot of the correspondence? There's one here from Will Progress.
Yes, I did.
That's
Yes.
Mount Moriah Mountain Bike Trail.
Yes.
Did they speak to you?
Of course, yes.
Oh, that's great, because I made it very clear that you need to talk to
Yeah.
you and get some support and through the
Yeah.
self-talk.
Sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
And thank you for that question, because I rang Councillor Norton this morning and asked him about it as well, and I see it as pulling the whole district together, so I think it's
Yeah.
good.
That's
It's
what I
been
want.
just been discussed for quite some time, and it's a great way to expand the network to our outer reaches of our council.
Absolutely.
And at this point, all they're asking for is help with the insurance, as I understand it.
Could I just
Sorry,
ask,
Councillor Cullen.
yes, could I just ask a question to Councillor Norton?
Yes.
On Bike SA, what has been their contribution to this area or this council over recent years?
Bike SA's contribution predominantly would be that they bring through 2 tours, being their annual tour, and one being their Outback Odyssey tour. And when they do so, they stay in town for 2 nights. I think it's 2 nights. They then contract MCDA to do the catering for them. They also support the other businesses in town. So they drop in here and through their design of their rides, I guess, for lack of a better word, to spill a fair amount of coin in the town while they do that. That's pretty much it from my knowledge.
They haven't contributed any financial amounts to cycling.
I think they had a lot to do with the Mawson Trail early on, with signage costs and that thing. I don't quote me on that. But their most recent contribution has been over the last few years with these annual tours that they come through.
But the reason I asked the question was in the Copper Coast Council, they are replacing the road from Moonta to Moonta Bay, and also the drainage and culverts, and putting in a new cycling trail. It's over a $4 million budget for this stretch of road or new road. Bike SA has contributed 70 or 75 and 50,000 to this whole project.
Yeah, right. Well,
Obviously to have a bike lane
yes.
going from the town to the bay. So I was just wondering whether there's scope for us to approach Bike SA for contributions in our cycling.
And that's on the actual road, Councillor Keller, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's a wide causeway
Yeah.
with a new wide bitumen road, all new drainage, storm drainage, everything, but incorporating a new cycling trail, which may even be bitumised. Wait and see what it's finished.
They may do the same to the Mawson Trail behind White Place.
So my question is it worth us approaching Bike SA for contributions to our, I was going to say ventures, but ventures with cycling?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, once again, you have a shovel-ready project that you've got in mind, whether it be signage to our existing trail or signage to our new rail trail, or it could be some giveaway signs, something that they could contribute to, and then contact them and ask the questions, I guess.
Well, thank you, and thank you for making Councillor Norton, alerting him of see if there's any opportunities, Councillor Keller. Keep liaising with each other and see what happens.
Sure.
Is that sufficient? Is there any more before I shut the meeting?
Mover,
Sorry?
need a mover for that, don't we?
Correspondence.
Correspondence.
Oh, yes.
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Keller, for saving my bacon.
Also,
Thank you, Councillor Prestridge. Saving my bacon. All those for? Carried. I now close the meeting at 5:48. Thank you for your attendance.